Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special reading of a very special book. It's called Earth, Our Home, and it's got some of the most fabulous creators behind it. With us, we have Anushka, Ravishankar, Karthika, Nair, Salil Chaturvedi, Sampurna Chattarji, and Aindri C. The story of Earth is the story of life. It is also a story of loss, one worsened by climate change. The verses in this book tell both these stories in the voice of the orangutan, the Hasdeo Arand forest, the South Asian river dolphin, and the Pondicherry shark, and reminds us that our future is in our hands. The Earth story. I'm Earth, your home, a place to explore and roam, a place of wonder and love, with soil beneath and sky above. Choking on carbon, gasping for breath, now is the time to protect Earth, your home, a place of wonder and love. The Earth's climate is changing. Our planet is now warmer because humans are pumping more and more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and at the same time cutting down more and more trees. Glaciers and ice caps are melting, the sea level is rising, and we are seeing extreme weather events such as floods and droughts more frequently.
Hasdeo Arand, hear my story. Greetings, young ones who may not know my name. Age-old forest, I do not ask for fame. Lung of the earth I am, and of your land. My breath gives shape to river, ravine, strand and quicksand, tribe and tree, bird, beast, et al. Life I grant to bamboo, mahua, sal, scores of herbs and shrubs and medicinal plants. Gods and gons, tigers, leopards, even ants, elephants, bears, and many more do roam on my chest. Since ancient times, I'm their home. Yes, home, green and brown, golden or burn. Theirs through summer whirlwinds, earthquake, monsoon scares, through joy, sorrow, the ravages of time, together, yes, like a bell and its chime. Hasdeo Arand, now do something, please. Together, we thought we would always be, but humans found black gold in my belly. 1 billion metric tons of coal, they say, run in my veins. For this fortune, they'll slay, oh gladly, the fates of plants and seed pods, tigers and tribes, elephants, even gods. Know this, they tear into my flesh to reach the heart as I speak, deaf to my pain screech, blind to the hundreds of thousands of trees marked for death. One by one, do something, please. Look, listen, query, while there is still light. Act before it's too late. Act, for my plight turns the sky to dust and rivers to ash. Act and save yourselves from the earth's backlash.
The orangutans call, orange fur up high in the trees, resting a moment in a rainforest breeze. A pause to look at the river afar, nibbling the leaf like a chocolate bar, gathering clouds in the afternoon. Under a leaf umbrella I'll be soon. Then for a while in my leaf nest I'll doze, a little rest for my 4 curly toes. Now what's that smoke? It's making me sneeze. The orangutans sigh, orange flames around the forest coil, rows of trees aflame, even the soil. A fire so big, where do I go? Near and far is a fiery glow. Gone, my nest and my favorite trees. Ugly and horrific, someone stop this, please. Torching forests that were once our home, all for some palm oil and a bit of gold? No, you won't go far if the forests boil. Rainforests in Indonesia and Malaysia are being cut down for oil palm cultivation. The orangutan and other animals' homes are being threatened by habitat degradation and frightening wildfires. Changes in the climate increase the risk and severity of forest fire.
The dolphin dance. Shushuk, shushuk, I'm a freshwater dolphin. Shushuk, shushuk, I swim and I leap. Shushuk, shushuk, I lurk in the shallows. Shushuk, shushuk, but I hunt in the deep. Shushuk, shushuk, in the dark, muddy waters. Shushuk, shushuk, I see little light. Shushuk, shushuk, but my ears are my eyes. Shushuk, shushuk, for sounds give me sight. Shushuk, shushuk, as I breathe on the surface. Shushuk, shushuk, I spring and I dive. Shushuk, shushuk, and as long as I'm living, shushuk, shushuk, the river will thrive. The dolphin lament. There's sewage in the water. There's garbage all around. Boats and dams and blockages and fishing nets abound. You hunt me for my flesh and oil. You churn and chop the river with noises that can make me blind. Soon I'll be gone forever. My shushuk breath no longer heard. I will not dive nor leap. The water will lose all its wealth. The river then will weep. The South Asian river dolphin was once found in many river systems. This freshwater mammal is now endangered because of poaching, habitat loss, and pollution. Clean rivers can reduce the impact of global warming.
The Pondicherry Shark says hello. Aren't I a looker with my black-tipped fin, with round eyes that gleam of beautiful things, like my gentle nature, my freshwater soul, my charming gill slits as I rock and roll down the rivers Saigon, Meneganga, and Hooghly, flashing my stripes and throwing a googly, with a notch in my tail like a real moon, the cutest crescent-shaped reason to swoon, with the sweetest intuitive smile, as I say, hello, human, it's been a while. I'm Carcahines Hemiodon, but if that's a mouthful, just call me Gone. I dined on inkfish and became a poet. If I don't tell you, how will you know it? I'm a ghost, as friendly in life as in death. And I'm saying hello with my very last breath. The Pondicherry Shark says goodbye. I'm small, I'm stocky, I'm dead. I rise to speak inside your head. Once we were a regular catch, but none of us was ever a match for your tricks, your greed, your skill at trapping and netting and making a kill. You turned us into shark fin soup. You threw us all into a mighty loop. You ruined our homes and our ease by spilling oil on our rivers and seas. After 40 years, they found me dead. I rise to speak inside your head. Don't you see our lives are linked? Save other sharks from going extinct. Do your bit for all, it's now or never. From me, my friend, it's goodbye forever. The Pondicherry shark was considered extinct for almost 40 years, but was sighted once again in the waters of Sri Lanka. Critically endangered, the species needs protection from overfishing, habitat loss, and pollution. Climate change is accelerating extinction. When a species goes extinct, entire ecosystems fall apart, affecting the balance of nature.
Our future, our choice. Climate change's impact is felt by human beings, but also by animals, insects, birds, plants, and all forms of life. Scientists believe that the Earth has entered its sixth extinction period, one accelerated by climate change and human actions. But we still have a choice for a better future. Small steps can go a long way in protecting life on planet Earth, including ours. Start with the most important one, respecting and loving nature. From this respect and love will emerge voices that speak for nature, and from these voices will grow responsible actions and green policies that make meaningful change happen. Together, we can face the climate crisis and build a better tomorrow for you and everyone who calls planet Earth their home.
When we wrote to you asking for this book, we said pick a species which is non-human. And what drew you to your particular species?
I actually started with the thought of using the octopus, but then I realized to my delight that it's not actually endangered. So I didn't use the octopus. I wanted to use dolphins somehow. I think ever since I read Douglas Adams, I've had a soft corner for dolphins. So I think they're really intelligent beings, and I felt. And also, I recently read Ranjit Lal's essay about the river dolphin in 10 Indian animals you may never again see in the wild. So, it all came together, and somehow the dolphin seemed to be calling to me. So I decided to write about that.
And I really like how you use the sound, and then the sound gets silenced in the second page.
So one of the things, two of the things that really appealed to me about the dolphin, one was that the thing about, it's called the susu actually in some parts of Bengal. So, but the sound is actually shushuk. I listened to it. And that was one thing. And the other thing is the whole thing of echolocation, which I found so fascinating. That's how they, like bats, they find their way around with echolocation. So, yeah, so that shushuk, the sound that it makes was very important. And I thought that the breathing of the dolphin, I was imagining it like gasping slowly and dying. So I tried to get that in, but of course in the second poem, we don't have the shushuk, but that's also telling because it's lost its breath.
That's true. The absence speaks so much. Karthika, you took on the whole forest, and that too at a time when Hasdeo Arand's been in the news, and really frightful news. So tell us about that.
There were many reasons why it spoke to me, but also we had conversations, you and I, and it linked so much with your theme of earth. And I thought, a patch of earth, a forest to begin with, and a forest that's so ancient was just as valid an entity as a species. It was an entire ecosystem to itself. It still is, though very much sort of mutilated. And I think visuals were very telling. So I'm very grateful to Aindri for also rendering that in those, with the stark contrast that is in the two poems, because most of what I saw was also visuals about how the land was getting desecrated. It was almost like an amputation. And it's funny, if you remember, I wrote two poems which were initially too adult, so you asked me to rewrite. And the funny thing is, across that year, I wrote several poems across Hasdeo Arand using a variety of forms. There's a ghazal, there's all sorts of things. There's a visual poem, and one of the problems was that it was too visual, the initial one that I wrote. And they're going to be seen in a variety of anthologies. So in that sense, I'm feeling quite fiercely glad that you triggered thought, Bijal, into what became an entire series across various media.
Yeah. Sampurna, Pondicherry Shark, we had to go find somebody to actually help us what the Pondicherry Shark looks like, because it was such an interesting species to pick.
So to begin with, I just knew it had to be riverine. I knew that it has to be something to do with fish, because I love fish, not just for all the wrong reasons of being a fish-eating Bengali, which is completely a no-no in this scenario, but because of the fascination with this aquatic creature. Okay. So I jumped into this whole thing as if it was a whole new world of discovery for me, Bijal, if you remember. And I went quite crazy. So I had actually 4 species on my preliminary list. And that was actually the moment of sobering, because then I realized that, this is not fun. The fact that there are all these species, I found a study which told me that, this is the list of critically endangered freshwater fish. And even now I can feel I can feel a sort of horror at the thought that list is increasing. But having said that, I found I chose four. So there was the giant guitar fish, there was the humpbacked mahseer, there was the Pondicherry shark, and there was the rhino ray. Okay, and all of them were at different levels of endangerment, if that's a word at all. And I must say that there were different reasons for gravitating to these, and some of them were poetic reasons. For example, the guitar fish. Yeah, when I was thinking, remember Bijal, your original brief was songs of innocence and experience. So I was thinking guitar fish, and I was thinking song, melody. I was thinking how beautifully it could be perhaps illustrated. So those were almost extra, extracurricular reasons. But finally, I went in for the Pondicherry Shark because it seemed at the outer limit of this grave situation. There was almost this fabular feeling that once upon a time there was a Pondicherry shark. And my research told me that the first mention was in 1839. And then I looked up all the figures and I thought, how is it that a species, harmless species, small and stocky, immediately I felt a kinship, a physical kinship with the shark, small and stocky. And then does nobody any harm, is just literally wiped off the face of the earth. So that was the final reason for me to uh, pick Pondicherry shark, and also because um, it's a requiem shark. This is what happens when you know next to nothing about certain species, and then when you start research, there's a bounty of information, and I just found the word requiem shark. I was like, oh God, Requiem, this is going to be a lament, isn't it? The part of the whole thing is a mourning for the dead. And I remember my first set of poems had all these difficult ideas in them, Bijal. And then I had to take them away and make it a little simpler and easier. So that was very similar, the process by which I went through.
Salil, yours was the first to the finish line, and it was just so beautiful. And then you pointed out that it's acrostic in nature, and I think we were just blown away by that. So, what made you pick, go a little outside the country to pick the orangutan?
Yeah, I mean, when I got the book, that's when I realized that this was. I mean, if I had thought about it a little more, I probably would have picked something from within the region, but it was first thought, best thought. And, in my book of poems, in the Sanctuary of the Poem, there's actually a poem which says, sometimes I feel like an orangutan. So I feel a great kinship with the orangutan. It's been there for a while. And there are species that are so close to us. And very emotive eyes, and they're almost like human. So that has always really appealed to me, and I've always loved orangutan. So as soon as you asked me to, this was the first idea that I had, and well, that's pretty much it. The orangutan is somehow I have a lot of, there's a lot of kinship that I feel with that species. And of course, we've all been reading about the rainforest, and it's been happening over years. And now there is some connect, because we hear that palm oil is being planned for India in a big way. So there is some connect with the orangutan still, even though it's not geographically located in India.
Aindri, when we decided to do this book, that time Sheena, Aparna, and I were sitting and discussing this, and we had all our four poets had said yes and everything, and we were like, who's illustrating? And we were like, it has to be Aindri. So, and we're so glad, because I think it's one of the most visually arresting books that we've created. So we had a lot of conversations about your approach and the textures that you played around with. Do you want to just chat with everyone about that?
Yes, I wanted to talk to you about two different ways that I approach the illustrations. And one was, this is my scan of, I scanned
these plants and flowers that I keep with myself. And the other one was to use both biodegradable and non-biodegradable objects. So what I did was, with these, I tried a technique called monoprinting, where you add ink to any surface and you take the impression of these guys and you scan them again and you use them as illustrations. So I thought the contrast would be very stark and it will come out in the illustrations. So I have like a whole uh, like PDFs of these textures, and they're for free. So if you want, like, you can download them and play with them as well. Do you want me to show you the process?
Yes, please. We'd love to see it.
So the process, so this thing I learned was, so I use a silicon slab, but you can use styrofoam or anything of that, and just any kind of water-based ink, so it doesn't. And then you roll the ink on. So I use lots of nets, plastic spoons, caps, and all of that. And so you get these kind of lovely prints, and this is one of them. And then you can take this one as well, and get a print, like a thin print, the negative of the print as well. So I learned that in, I guess, 19th century Japan, when the fishermen used to catch fish, they used to, it's called, the technique is called gotoku, and they used to take prints of fish using water-soluble ink. So the catch would be printed on paper, and that is the way they used to record the catch for the day. And I thought this was a really interesting technique to use as a record of, you know, these objects that will never disappear and will remain, compared to these. So yeah, so I wanted to use that contrast in the illustrations.
Working on this project, has it kind of led to an impetus to work on more climate stories? Because let's face it, those are urgent stories to tell right now. So
no, absolutely, Bijal. Because this was, I think you were the first person who ever asked me to work on a project like this. So for me, it was also extremely, I don't know, it was just so special to be asked. That was one part of it. But like I already said, the level of discovery, it's simultaneously wondering how is it that this has happened? How could this have happened? So the scope of it is so large. And the only way to stop yourself from drowning in that deluge of really dire information is to hold on to the things that just still gleam through. Yeah. And I think what this project has actually done is made me not think of these in these generic, globalized, generalized tones in which everybody bandies these topics about. And the deep search, when you do a deep search, which this project made me do that deep search. So now I have material for other poems because I have so many versions of so many poems and the rhino ray and all of that. So it's almost become like the beginning of something sustainable, if I may borrow that word. and maybe a way of giving back, because I'm also very guilty of being a fish eater, and I sometimes think of the Bengalis who ate up all the olive ridley turtles before they had a chance to replenish themselves. So these kind of historical guilt is also there. So I think this project has started me off on a journey which is important in its own right, and which is also challenging my poetry skills and my way of looking and thinking about words in a very different way. So I'm really quite grateful for this opening of this chapter, as it were.
Karthika, I know you're working on lots of eco fables right now anyway, so we hope to see more from you as well.
Yeah, as you know, it started long back with the Honey Hunter. And our Joel's and my publisher of the Honey Hunter, the original, the French, the Le Tigre de Miel, bang in the middle of the pandemic, actually a couple of months before I think you and I started talking, commissioned us to write a series, or me to write and Joel to illustrate. So, join hands again. A series of eco fables set in South Asia. So yeah, I'm kind of eyebrows deep in that.
Really waiting for that. Salil, one of your poems that constantly haunts me is A Butterfly Fell. And I feel you're somebody who, because you're so close to nature in many ways, where you are, do you think that, and this is a fact that's being talked about across the world, that nature words are slipping from our lexicon? And I was just wondering if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Amitabh Ghosh talks a lot about how there's not enough representation, or over a period of time, there's the human condition is just talked about with novels, and animals are disappearing. So in my work, somehow I have been unable to write a poem or finish a poem without some creature coming in. I don't know why it works like that. So even when my grandmother passed away, I just didn't know how to deal with it. I kept thinking about it till an old ibis came along and helped me through, and I wrote a poem where my grandmother and the ibis are kind of conflated in some ways. So for me, the process of thinking is an eco way of thinking. That's who I am. In fact, I'm working on a poetry book called Love and Longing in the Anthropocene, which again has lots of creatures, and well, it's a critique also in many ways. It's so difficult, like Sampurna was also saying, that just before the pandemic, I was still trying to cope with the fact that there were 1 billion, by the time they found out how many, 1 billion animals were lost in the Australian fires. Now, how do you parse something like that? It just takes months to figure it out. And then I just feel that, there needs to be grieving for something like this. We need to, and I think even with children, when I read this book, I said, oh my God, it's like really a lament, and it might be a little depressing for children to kind of, but they need to know all this, and who's going to grieve for all the loss that's happening. So yeah, one finds it very difficult to cope with all the news that comes in, and it's very much a part of my work, a part of my life, part. It's the way I think. I think in eco terms. So I don't know if I've answered your question though.
Very beautifully, yes. Thank you. Anushka, how about you? I mean, I know that you did take some time to write this poem, because it was during the pandemic that this was happening, and it was very hard to write this. And I still find it amazing how you managed to keep the playfulness and yet give it this darkness at the same time, which is because usually your writing is so is always associated with humor and mischief and all of that. And I kind of feel like you also really, I feel like a lot of readers will see a different side of you in this in some ways.
So first of all, I must say this, I feel like a bit of a fraud in this company, because I don't primarily think of myself as a poet at all. You know, I've written poetry for children, but I think of myself much more as a children's book writer than a poet, just to see. So for me, that you asked me to write for a book of poetry was a little bit, you know, and that too with Sampurna and Karthika, and it was a little bit like, do I even belong in this company kind of thing. But when I came to write the poem, the thing is that I have always written a lot of books and poems for children about animals. A lot of my picture books are about animals. So, and I've also thought a lot about this thing of how the whole animal-human interface and how humans are taking away the habitat. So if you see Catch the Crocodile, you know, Tiger, they're all about that. They're all about that. So I have kind of engaged with that thought for a long time. So to that extent, the writing of it wasn't that different. But like you said, yeah, it is the lament part it's always there. It's not that one doesn't have these dark things in one's head. Is that when you're writing for children, you tend to put that aside and try to only keep the happy stuff and keep aside this. But like Salil said, one has to, children need to know these things. They need to think about these things. And so, I mean, it's okay that they need to see both sides of the coin. And I think it's very important that we do that, you know. So, yeah, so when I, you know, when you're writing about, when I was writing about the dolphin, what was happening to it is very much part of its life, right? So the fact that it might die is always there. So there's no escaping it. So then that wasn't a very difficult shift for me. The one thing that we've always said is the trouble with writing about these things for children is you are afraid that you leave them without hope, you know, without hope for the future. And that's a very troubling thought. So how the question about in writing about the environment is, how do you write in a way that you give them hope, you give them the possibility of a better future, you know, which in my old age, I can't see. I'm kind of, I feel there's no hope for this planet, but you can't let children feel that. So how do you write like that? That's always been a big question for me. How do you write about these things in a way that leaves them with hope? I don't know if anybody has an answer. Vijal, you've been writing fun things.
I have no hope. I didn't finish Bura for 6 years because I didn't have an end to give it. And then it still ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. But it is hard. And I think, which is why I feel like the power of, in this book, we also wondered the same thing. Will it be very dark? Will it be very, will the message come across? And Yashashvi, who somebody recently just sent us a bunch of poems written by children, inspired from Earth Our Home. And we were just amazed by the responses that this book got from these children. So it suddenly made me feel like, you know, this is perhaps the power of words and images, that it does get children to think, question, and at the end of the day, challenge, I guess. But also, one of the things that I see this book is also, it's an artistic response to what's happening, more than anything else also. And in fact, Aindri has become my default go-to person for climate stories. Aindri, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's amazing because I get to learn so much from you, and you really push me to think about how illustration helps to convey something that is very abstract to lots of people, because they don't see it happening in real time. So like, you need to have that time-lapse vision to be able to understand it.
Are you working on any more climate-related projects right now?
I'm working on the Doddles book, with Pratham, yeah, which is on fuel and aliens trying to find fuel on Earth. So that's very cute with CJ Salamander as the writer.
Yes, Aindri, I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about the selection of colors, because it's one of the most powerful things in the book, and I suspect we all felt the same way, but especially the after. I mean, the shock is so instant, and it kind of grounds the narrative each time. With somehow I wouldn't have associated that particular combination with grief, but that's what it left me with.
Yeah, this was I feel so weird talking as a puppet, but this was a decision that was made by the art team, that we wanted to do complete contrast with like a page which is really colorful and vibrant, and a page which is devoid of color. And red and orangish red was something I chose because of like the ferrous nature, and things like that. And I thought the textures, like for example, these look better as stark images versus these where you can see the variation in the colors. So yeah, it came like the function sort of followed the form in this aspect.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for everyone for joining us today and spending time talking about this process. I kind of feel like I have learned a lot and I've been part of this book from the beginning. But it was really a delight to just listen to all of you read this book and also talk about it. So thank you so much for firstly creating this book and talking about it.
Thank you, Bijay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So lovely to meet all of you.